Marcelo Mayer gets the call up. What did you see from him this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't look overmatched at the plate. I think this is a kid who, people had very high expectations for heading into spring training, heading into the season. I think he came close or was leading the minor leagues in RBIs. So, a guy who's a smooth defender, an athlete. Obviously, a lot of hype about him around here for like 4 years. Was this the way they wanted to call him up because of a catastrophic injury in between the halves of a doubleheader on a rainy day at Fenway? No, but the excitement was there. I think it overshadowed the loss of Bregman a little bit, which I think is the bigger story. I'm sure we'll talk about. But two of the big three are up. The fans want Roman Anthony next, and it's an exciting time from that point of view when everything else has kind of gone to hell.
Roman
Mm-hmm.
Anthony. Do you think at some point, if this 500 is, 500-ish little slumpy offense ride continues, they're going to figure out a way to force him into the lineup?
I think you kind of have to at some point, and you lose something defensively in center field by unplugging Rafaela, but he goes through stretches. I think he's something like a 1 for 22. He was in. The defense obviously plays. He's elite in center, but the swing and miss, the strikeouts at the bottom of the lineup, just something you can't have on a struggling team when you need to try to play small ball. So, that's a trade off. Obviously, the offense defense, you'd have to move Duran to center. Anthony would probably play left, which you can handle at Fenway in the small left field. But it's just like, how much can you ask out of rookies? They would be, if he's in a lineup starting four of them, the big three and Campbell, Mayer, and Anthony, and then Narvaez, as I mentioned, they have a rookie in the rotation, and Dobbins, a lot of guys debuting. It's a big ask to try to turn this thing around or even keep them afloat until Bregman comes back or some of these guys get healthy. So I probably would do it at this point. Guys are going to have these struggle patches in the majors. They're going to have times where the game speeds up. We've seen that with Campbell over the last month. I think there's something to having them all doing it together. Mayer, Anthony, Campbell are extremely close. Mayer and Anthony have been for a period of years coming up through the system together. So, for a team that needs a spark, the spark doesn't really come in the way of Mayer in my mind. He's a great play. Probably he's going to be a great player, but it comes because of a catastrophic injury. With Anthony, it could kind of be hey, we need to turn this around. And so at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if it's any day. He has nothing left to prove in the minors. It's just they have Duran, they have Abreu, they have Rafaela, they have Devers, playing, getting DH at bats every day. It's tough to find a place where to put him. I think if they get creative with Rafaela and do something they don't want to do, mix him into the infield mixer as a super utility guy, maybe that clears the path. And a couple more losses, and I think that spark, that urgency comes even more into play.
I played in Boston, right? I went through it. You work in Boston. You see it every day. If you have to count on three rookies in Boston, how happy are the fans going to be? I mean, yes, I know there'll be an excitement, but you already mentioned Campbell struggling. God forbid Meyer struggles. God forbid all these guys. Anthony comes up and struggles. Then what? Because then they've wasted their best three prospects that are supposed to save the organization, and their year falls apart, and then it might change their whole trajectory. So, how much are Boston fans worried that, man, if this is the only answer, we're in trouble?
Boston fans are absolutely in love with these prospects. The hype train has rolled, I think, for so long on Meyer. I mean, has been a top 10 prospect in the game since he was drafted in 2021. With Anthony, it's been he emerged in his first pro season. Campbell came on last year, so these fans are very familiar with these guys. They have extremely high hopes for them. I think unfairly from all of us, the media, the fans, the organization, to be the saviors. You don't want 21, 22-year-old kids to be, cast in that light. It's just where they are right now with Bregman out, with Casas out, with other guys scuffling. And I think it's also important to the point you just made, like for fans and everybody to understand that if Roman Anthony is an average major leaguer this year, or Meyer or Campbell when it's all said and done, that doesn't, tell the story of what they're going to be in the future. We've seen that play out with some of even the brightest stars in the game, right? Judge and Trout and some of those guys. But the counterpoint, as I said, is if there's going to be some growing pains and some learning experiences, you might as well, have them do it all together where they can kind of, bounce things off each other and have the close friendships they do. And also, have it happen sooner rather than later. If Roman Anthony is going to have a 4 strikeout game, might as well be in the majors where the upside's there instead of AAA in my mind. And, there's tough conversations to happen when it comes to the outfield, but I do think now's the time.
Kratz, my pup was picky, not anymore with Spot and Tango Unkibble, and it is about 40% less expensive than frozen food. So we're saving in the wallet and we're making our pups happier.
Let's go apples to apples. I'm not cheap, but I don't want to waste my money on something that's good for my dog. This is perfect.
Yeah, they are very excited. Both Bella, Kratz's pup, and Penelope, my little pup, for Spot and Tango. You can get your pup excited too, and there's no more guessing how much to feed your dog either. Spot and Tango creates a custom plan based on your dog's age, weight, breed, and activity level. It's a nice little survey. So upgrade your pet's bowl with Spot and Tango Unkibble for a limited time. Go to spotandtango.com/foul. Use code FOUL to get 50% off your first order. That's spotandtango.com/foul, code foul for 50% off your first order. Spotandtango.com/foul, code foul.
The Bregman injury, he's got a significant injury, especially with how well he was hitting to start off this year. I think he was a big key piece into that order and really moving that thing along. So who's going to fill the spot for that? How are they going to cope with him being out, and how serious of an injury is it?
Yeah, they're talking about 2 months, 10 weeks, something in that range, because Bregman had this happen 4 years ago in Houston in 2021, and it was Cora and Bregman described it as a very similar thing. Obviously, he's 4 years older now, so maybe the recovery time is even a little longer. It's hard to project. It's hard to compare when there's that age gap. But he thought it was nothing when it first happened. It turned out to be something. Meyer's going to play third. It seems like he's the plan kind of on an everyday basis, which is kind of crazy because this kid is a natural shortstop. He was starting to work in at second base so they could move Campbell to first. And, now all those plans are kind of ruined. And as we've written and talked about on our pod, like this has really kind of screwed up the whole infield in a big way. They were looking to, install Campbell at first because they needed to fill that hole with Casas out and call Mayer up to play second. Now they can't do that. That extends the leash on Story, who hasn't hit for a month, and it extends the leash on Campbell, who hasn't hit for a month too. So it's kind of like a fire drill, times 4 at this point because they have to keep moving pieces around. Devers is still not going back into the field. I think the door is shut on that. There's a lot going on when it comes to the infield. It just shows you, how losing Casas and how losing Bregman has really affected them, and the domino effect is huge.
Chris, can we now say that the defensive woes weren't all Raffy Devers? I know we kind of joked about that earlier, but can we officially say that, hey, just because Raffy Devers, because their defense, like you can talk about the offense, but their defense hasn't been very good for a while either. Basically, the whole year, their defense has been below average.
Yeah, I mean, basically for the last 4 years, the defense has been below average. The outfield defense is good. Abreu is a Gold Glover and right. Duran and Rafaela are both very good. But in the infield, I think part of it is piecing it together at first and just kind of the domino effect without that steadying presence. Not that Casas is a Gold Glover over there, but just mixing and matching guys who haven't played the position much, whether that is Romy Gonzalez, who's hurt right now, Toro, who we saw a lot of over the weekend, or Sogard, or having Campbell try to learn it on the fly. He hasn't gotten into a game yet. Campbell, a rookie, learning the major league game at second, learning the speed of it, has been shaky. Story, it looks like he's taken a step back, not just at the plate, but in the field as well. And, Bregman was a stabilizing force over there after some early errors, but now you're asking Mayer, who, again, it has defensive upside, but in the middle. And he's not played third much. He's coming up kind of similar to Bogarts in 2013, right? A long-term shortstop coming up and debuting at third because of a need. This is where they're at. And so it has not been great. And I know it just drives Alex Cora crazy because he's a guy that built a 13-year major league career around being a good defender and occasionally getting a hit, as he always likes to say. And so they've switched infield instructors like 3 times from, the time Cora's been here, from the time he came back. Ramon Vasquez and Jose Flores are doing it now, and nothing's clicked. And I think it just comes down to personnel and just the instability you've seen. I mean, they entered the year with Casas, Campbell, Story, and Bregman. They thought it was a pretty good mix. On paper, it should be. But when you have half of that mix out now and Campbell learning the game on the fly and Story taking a step back, you can see how, the unearned runs, the Little League home runs always seem to add up for this team.
What's the inner discussion around Story a little bit? Is it just kind of like a hang with him and hope that he catches a little bit of a heat here and regains some of his former kind of self? Or is there any kind of plan that they have kind of starting to move and kind of get the ball rolling on?
Yeah, they tried to unplug him for a day or two over the weekend. They've tried to do that a couple times just as a reset day, go work in the cage. I mean, nothing has clicked. He has one extra base hit against a pitcher, a non-position player, in the last month. He had a homer in Kansas City against a real pitcher. He doubled over the weekend against a position player with Baltimore. Other than that, he's hitting 132 with 40 strikeouts over 114 at bats. It has been ugly to watch. He looks lost at the plate against, every pitch you could possibly imagine. What complicates this is that, he is a guy who has immense respect in the clubhouse. He's a guy that they still think has a lot of athleticism, a lot of talent, just been sidelined by injuries. But for a team with designs on competing, the question was, as of earlier or a week ago, like, how long could you continue to let this go? But now, Marcelo Mayer, a natural shortstop, was that replacement. If they were going to make the drastic move and say, eat a ton of salary and DFA Trevor Story, I don't know if that was ever in play. I'm not saying it should be. It's just a conversation worth having at this point. I think Mayer was going to be the guy to come up and play short, and you could figure it out from there. Now you need him to play third base every day with Bregman out. And so the list of options has dwindled. And I think Story might have a little longer leash out of that. This is a guy who's been streaky throughout his career. Maybe the calendar turns to June, the weather heats up a little bit more, and he carries the offense for a couple of weeks, which they really need a right-handed bat now with Bregman out, Campbell struggling. But you look at the numbers. He started out so great, and it's just been one of the worst months you can imagine at the plate, and tough, I think, in that clubhouse for a guy that they respect as much as they respect him.
Chris, what about Casas? You mentioned Triston Casas. Like, where are the Red Sox at with him? I know he has an injury history. They came into the year. You mentioned he has shaky defense, but where are the Red Sox? What's the long-term plans for him? They're hoping he comes back and he figures out how to play again, or is it kind of the end for him there in Boston? They're going to try and move him and move on and find someone else.
Yeah, I mean, he's out for this year for sure, and this is going to be a long rehab from the patellar tendon. The injuries have been, and I kind of like to categorize, like, are they soft tissue things that just happen and guys are perpetually banged up, or are they, really gruesome injuries? With him, it's been a rib cage. He tore his cartilage in his rib cage, which I would imagine is like the most painful thing anyone's ever been through. That was what it was last year. There's not a lot of surgical options there, a lot of healing. You just kind of are, accelerated healing options. You have to wait until that feels better. This year, we all saw it play out. He landed weirdly, non-contact injury, and it's like worse than a torn ACL from what everybody says. So I think bad luck more than anything on the injury front. Trading a guy when his value is this low over the winter doesn't make a ton of sense. So I think he comes to camp, and hopefully for them he's healthy, and hopefully he's ready to contribute. Craig Breslow spoke of this guy as having not 30 homer upside, but 40 homer upside heading into this year. He's still young. People think of him as, maybe a little older than the rest of the core, but still, early to mid-20s, a guy that they, imagine contributing in the future. But it's a long road of recovery, and it's not a sure thing when you come back from these gruesome year-long knee rehabs that you can be the same guy. They're hoping on that. I wouldn't be surprised to see them add some insurance, some first base options, either at the deadline with Control or over the offseason, because right now, as I said, they're throwing out Romy Gonzalez, who was DFA'd by the White Sox a year ago, Abraham Toro, who signed an NRI, and Nick Sogard, who without this injury would probably be a DFA candidate. So they don't have much in the pipeline. Maybe a guy like Blaze Jordan, who was a YouTube superstar at 13 and has been in their system for a while, is the guy who emerges. But for now, they're piecing it together, and I think they have to come up with a better long-term plan there.
What's the overall tone then for the Red Sox team right now? How would you say it? Because as a former player, the clubhouse likes to rely on the older guys. And you said if the story's not going well, or some of these older guys who aren't playing well, they're normally the ones who pick up everyone, that they're the positive influence on everyone, the positive energy. But if they're kind of dealing with their own crap at the plate and not playing too well, there's a lot of negativity that can kind of creep in. And we saw a Refsnyder quote kind of at the end of the game recently where he's talking about, he's like, we just suck right now. Is there a light at the end of the tunnel for this team? Is it just anything that can go wrong is going wrong right now? Or do they just kind of try to stay afloat right now until they can get Bregman and some other people back down the road and hopefully still be in it when it comes? Or is it starting the gloom to be too much, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, the Refsnyder quotes, I think, said a lot. A veteran guy standing up and saying, we got to figure this out. Like, this is not a team like it was a year ago or 2 years ago that was looking for, maybe we win 84 games and get in. Maybe not. And if not, it's all about player development. This is a team that got Crochet, that got Bregman, that got Walker Buehler on a high-paying one-year deal, that kind of tried to go, if not, full throttle or all in this winter, something close to it. It was spread out, so people don't realize how aggressive it is. But Bregman and Crochet, along with Buehler, Chapman, some of these guys, like, it was a pretty big offseason with designs on contending this year. And they have just not clicked as a team. When they've pitched, they haven't hit. When they've hit, they haven't pitched. The defense has been shaky and cost them games. They've lost a ton of one-run games, which is a sign to me of a team that turns wins into losses, which they have. And now I think the big question is just the lineup. You were relying on Casas and Story and Bregman to be, three of your top 5-6 hitters probably. And you're not getting anything out of Bregman for 2 months. You're not getting anything for Casas for the rest of the year. Story struggles, as we talked about. So they're talking about ways to fix this lineup. Behind Devers right now, like Wilyer Abreu, and so Jarren Duran leads off, and he's a good player. Abreu is a good hitter. They're trying this rookie, Carlos Narvaez, who is a catcher they got in a minor trade with the Yankees in December that nobody knew anything about, as the number 3 hitter, the number 4 hitter. Has he been producing? Of course, but it just kind of shows you how the deck of cards has kind of collapsed. They need guys to step up, whether that's Mayer carrying them offensively, in his debut week or debut month, whether that's Campbell turning things around, whether it's Roman Anthony coming up and being a middle-of-the-order guy immediately, which is a huge ask from a 21-year-old kid. They need something to click, whether it's an early trade, I don't know. But the lineup to me is concerning, because if you look around 1 through 9, first base is a question mark. Second and short, as we've covered, haven't been hitting. Rafaela has been slumping. You're relying on 3 or 4 guys, and we've seen that play out over the last week where outside of the numbers don't look that bad because they have some blowout wins. They scored 13 runs against a position player against Baltimore the other day. And so that, all those stats count. But if you watch it every day, it's not a good offensive team. And it hasn't been, and it's going to be, I think, worse, or significantly worse without Bregman.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.